Hey everybody, just a few thoughts to share on road to freedom. And this could be for a nation, for a family, for a person, and whatever freedom might mean to you. I'm just sharing some thoughts this morning. Freedom, of course, could be a new way of thinking about yourself, a new way of thinking about the different things that God has placed in your life. Freedom could be a way of thinking around the family covenant that is there and how to pursue it. So, freedom could mean different things to different groupings of people, and perhaps take what makes sense to you. I think there are four main sort of steps, and then there are sub themes that are located there, and we'll be able to deal with it. And it's pretty basic, really. I'm just here to remind you of things that you already know. We could use the Israelite example, we could use the South African example, we could use many biblical examples as well. You could use your own life as well and see how these lessons perhaps filter through. One, there's a recognition of the bad conditions at the moment. So it's important for us to acknowledge at least that where we are is not a place of freedom, despite what people may say, despite how comfortable it is, despite how tolerable it is, despite the fact that, the basic needs are being met, despite the fact that there are good things on the odd occasion that are happening. But we must understand that there were laughter moments in the midst of slavery from time to time. There were moments of greatness for people. People were, some were earning a salary, some were able to send children to school, some were able to do some really cool things, be homeowners for the first time, build families, have marriages right in the midst of apartheid. But we must recognize that the conditions are bad. We are a people that are able to make the most out of very bad situations, and sometimes that then lulls us into, a false sense of security, if you will. But we must have a desire for better. We must have a desire that says, can we do more? Can we actually become more? There's a vision of better that we have, not only for ourselves, but also even for the generations coming after us. Because sometimes freedom is not a one generation project, whether it is freedom from corruption, whether it is freedom from bad habits, whether it is freedom from negative thoughts. We need to actively work at these things. And sometimes the vision of better, the desire for better, is where most people stop. They don't move beyond the desire to actually acting. Which leads me to my second point, which is a clash with the authority of the now bad conditions. So before they were okay, barely tolerable, but okay. We were making the most of it, but okay. But now we've got a clash. And for some, it feels like you're biting the hand that feeds you. These are thought patterns that you've always had. These are practices in your family that's always been there. These are things that we've always tolerated as a country. These are things that we've always tolerated as people. But we need to clash with the authority of the now bad conditions. Even though the bad place might be comfortable, might be tolerable. And it's important, if freedom in this case is being a better person, the authority will be you. The authority will be the negative self-talk. The authority will be yourself. The authority will be the things that you've internalized that are actually just not good for you. And I'm speaking about myself as well as we go through this little sharing and this little message, that we'd understand that it's critically important for us to acknowledge that freedom from bad thought processes, from bad habits, requires us to face ourselves, requires us to face and clash with ourselves and with the things that are not good about ourselves. But once we've clashed, once we've actually done it, once we've managed to move past these negative self-thought or patterns, once we've moved past what is comfortable to what is better, once we've moved past what is tolerable to what is great, then we need to adapt. And that's the third point. To this new state of freedom. The adapting to this new state of freedom also brings about some mixed feelings. And you'll excuse me, there's a bit of rain, I suppose, if you could hear it in the background. But some people miss the old. They miss the things that were there and they want it back, because we haven't yet adapted to this new state of freedom, this new state that is better than what we had before. There are interior and internal clashes about the new norm. Some people, perhaps if it's a country, might say that this new norm is not exactly what they had in mind and what they thought it was going to be. And so there are internal clashes around that. For families, it might be that this new norm is not delivering results in the way that they thought it would. And so there's clashes around that. And there are people who perhaps harken back to a time where, we understand that we've got to be a bit more egalitarian, but the good old days of this and the good old days of that. And most of the time when people refer to good old days, they weren't really good old days, but they're rather tolerable old days. They're badly comfortable old days. And this leads to the part we've got to create a new order. We've got to, in adapting to this new way of doing things, create a new order that actually serves us, that actually serves the purposes for which we are called, and even the things that we want to do. It can't be that we miss the old so much that we're not willing to build the new. And of course, finally, we've got to then thrive in the new state of freedom. This involves a new identity that is required, where those who were seen as slaves are now free. Is a oxymoronic sort of term sometimes that gets used, especially when people speak about slavery or when people speak about all sorts of tragedies, that people would be called Holocaust survivors, freed slaves. It actually centers the old identity. And I think that it's something that we've got to be able to take a look at, that would center the new identity. That would not call people freed slaves, but rather perhaps freed human beings, or human beings, or a new identity altogether that does not center the old. We call it a post-apartheid state, or a post-Holocaust state, or something of that sort. It centers the old, it centers the uncomfortable, it centers the negative place instead of centering the positive and the new identity that would be required. There are new ideas that are required in this new state of thriving, in this new state of freedom. And it's important that we understand that the new ideas are going to clash with the old. They're going to clash with the things that we were used to. And so perhaps new ideas need to be given time. So if it's freedom from a bad habit, we need to give the new habit time so that we can internalize it and make sure that it works. And then if it doesn't work, then we can adjust it. But the best practices of old have to be modified. We can't throw away everything that we've learned in the old system, but let's modify it. Let's make sure that it aligns to the new freedom. Let's make sure that it aligns to where it is that we want to go. And of course, we must settle in the new norm. It's critically important for us to settle. I think that in the hearkening for freedom or wanting freedom, sometimes people don't settle in there. There's a constant wanting of the old, or a constant discomfort with what is, or perhaps even trying to constantly have better than what is. And so it's important for us to actually settle and to actually develop places of contentment with the new norm, so that we would be able to move into a better identity with better ideas and actually be free. Free from the past, free from the bad ideas, free from the things that are actually not serving us. And so, it's important for us on this road to freedom to recognize the bad conditions at the moment, to clash with the authority that enforces those bad conditions, to adapt to the new state after that clash, and to thrive in the new state of freedom.